Hey everybody, Mo Bunnell here, your host of Real Relationships, Real Revenue. I have a real treat for you today. We've got Andrew Robertson, who's CEO of BBDO Worldwide, one of the largest agencies and houses of creative talent on the planet. Not only is Andrew a rainmaker in himself, but he's a leader of rainmakers. He's a leader of creative types that are doing some of the most interesting agency work on the planet. In this particular episode, we dig into the moment. We're going back to when Andrew was 19 years old. We dig into the moment that he started to realize that he could be great at growth, that he could be great at business development and relationship development. Stick around to the end of this episode because we get really practical in the end about how you can get the attention with value, how you can get the attention with insights for some of the clients that you're trying to either break into or expand your relationship with. Really cool stuff. More conceptual in the beginning, more practical in the end. Now, before we get into this particular episode, know that if you would like our best thinking on how to grow your book of business, grow your relationships, and grow your career, you can get a weekly article written by me. I spent a couple hours doing this to try to distill an idea down to something very short that you can read in a couple minutes and move your book of business, relationships, or career forward. All you have to do to get it is go to growbigplaybook.com, sign up there, growbigplaybook.com, you'll be all set. All right, here is Andrew Robertson. Hey everybody, Mo Bunnell here, your host at Real Relationships, Real Revenue. I have a real treat for you today. I've got Andrew Robertson. He's CEO of BBDO Worldwide. And Andrew, in the chat we've had in a couple interchanges, I just know that you've got a great sense about you about how we should interact with clients, how we as professionals should be able to add value and have deep, trusting relationships with our clients. And I can't wait to dig in today and go deeper on that with you. First question in this first episode, I want you to take me back to the moment when you first realized that business development or relationship development was a good thing and that it was something that you wanted to focus on.
So I don't know if I wouldn't classify it necessarily as, at that point, relationship development, because I think I came to realize that a little bit later. But the first time I realized that business development was just about discipline was when I was 19 years old. I was working as a barman in the Maidenhead Conservative Club, which is a working man's drinking cheap beer, basically a working man's drinking club in Maidenhead. And I suppose I did develop a cunning technique for relationships there. It was a very long bar, and I would go to one end of the bar, and there'd be a group of people drinking, and I would tell a joke, and that group would usually laugh. And then, as often happens when you tell a joke, somebody would tell a joke, and then I'd go down to the other end of the bar, and there'd be another group of people there drinking, and I would tell them the joke I'd just heard at the other end of the bar. And one of them would tell a joke, and then later on in the evening, I'd take that joke back to the first group of people. And in the course of the evening, both groups of people thought I was the funniest guy in the world, when all I had done was exchange that group's jokes with that group's jokes. All I needed was one to get going. In the course of that, I developed a relationship with one of those customers, who said to me one day, you could probably make more money if you were selling insurance for me. He was an insurance broker, than you do working behind this bar. And I said, well, I certainly couldn't make less, because I think I was making £2 an hour, and it was in England, so nobody tipped you anyway. So he said, look, I'll give you 2 days of training, and you can come into the office and use our telephone, which was a big deal in those days because you had to pay for phone calls. And then he said, then from then on, you just earn commission. And I thought, well, I'll try it. And I got the 2 days of training. And then from then, I used to, every Monday night, I would go to their offices, and I would sit and make 100 phone calls with a rotary phone. So my finger was like ground to the bone by the time I finished it. And there were no qualified lists or anything. I would literally work from the phone book, just calling people one after the other. And I learned that if I made 100 phone calls on a Monday night, I could set up 10 appointments for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday nights. I was at college, but this worked perfectly because could do that in the evening. And if I got 10 appointments, I would get 3 sales. And if I got 3 sales, I would make about £500 a week, which for a 19-year-old student was a lot of money, a lot of money. But then, what happened was I started to try and introduce variables. Like I would change my approach when I got into somebody's house. And because it was all really well worked out. You look for the picture of the kids, you look for the soccer shoes, you look for the bicycle, you do whatever you do, and that's the basis upon which you open up the conversation. And I got a little bit bored of it, and I would try and change my script. And what I realized was I just started losing commission, and because there was a reason that the approach that I'd been taught worked. And when I stopped earning as much commission, I realized that I should just go back to the approach that I'd been taught, and the commissions would go back up again. So that was one really important lesson. And the second one was if I didn't make the 100 calls, I wouldn't get anything. And that experience of just sitting with a telephone book and a telephone and knowing that the only way the calls are going to get made was if I made them, that was a really, really valuable lesson that I still, I still have that in my mind. So I didn't really appreciate at that point the value of developing relationships because, frankly, I wasn't in that business. I was selling policies one at a time. But I did learn a lot about the importance of discipline. I did learn a lot about the importance of having a tried and tested approach that you would repeat. And it got me through 2 very, very good years of university where I was living like a king.
and probably helped you, I would guess, even today. And
Oh, it does.
I want to dig into each of these because I'll tell you, Andrew, as we've moved through season 3, you're at the more tail end of this. One of the themes I've seen that I did not expect at all is for a lot of people that are ridiculously successful. Everybody in the season's ridiculously successful. CEOs, region leaders, some of the biggest successful rainmakers at their firms and organizations, things like that. And for most people, there was some type, and I didn't expect this, but some type of early experience that they had that taught them how to put in the work, how to keep going after it, how to focus on what they can control, things like that. The experience typically put them way outside their comfort zone. They had to put their ego aside and just keep moving forward. And I think with yours, thing 1 was about discipline. Thing 2 was about putting in the work and focus what you can control. Both are important. How do you think today those apply to the modern professional, the advisor, the person that has sage wisdom, but they've probably fallen in love with their craft, maybe not fallen in love with this relationship development stuff and might even hesitate to do it. How do these ideas of discipline and putting in the work apply?
I think they apply. I think they apply completely. I mean, we have a horrible habit of thinking people are either born able to do this or it becomes natural and intuitive for them to do it. And that, I guess, that may be true for some people, but in general, I don't think it is true. I don't think that unless you do put in the work, that you can be successful at it. And B, I think that even if you weren't, quotes, born with it, you can learn to do it if you put in the work. So to me, I think I really do believe that was really, really important for me. And one of the things I always work with my people on is that the danger with being being in love with you have to be in love with your craft. You have to be in love with what you do. But the most important thing is to get a meeting, not to have everything prepared and then try and get a meeting. Because if you try and do that, you will never get around to having the meeting. We're pretty good at working fast to put something together for a meeting. So my thing is always just don't work on the proposal, don't work on the presentation, get the meeting. Yeah. If you get the meeting, I guarantee in 24 hours, if we had to, we could deliver something worthwhile for the meeting. But what I see a lot of people doing is they concentrate on what it is they think they're going to have to deliver, and it never quite gets finished. And because of that, the meetings never even get set. So for me, that's like, just get a meeting. We'll figure out what we're going to present after that. Do whatever you've got to do to get a meeting. This is on prospecting rather than developing relationships, which is, I believe they're both practices require intention and discipline, but that it's slightly different when you don't know somebody.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, 100%. Then if you know them really well and they'll accept your call, and there's already a lot of trust and likability and things like that. So let's go into one of your two things even deeper. So the idea of making the calls in your old day, we broaden it to sort of putting in the work. When you think about the deepest technical experts, not only at BBDO, but think about lawyers and accountants, consultants, all the, who our audience is quite well. Somebody with one foot in a deep expertise, and they've got another foot in actually convincing people that they need their expertise, right? Same, but the point is the same human being is both the content expert, and they've got to be a relationship expert too. What's your advice to folks to get started? Like a lot of the feedback we've got about the show as we're growing like crazy is it's the practical tips that people give that people really love. And I think it's a great way to close out an episode. So if you had to give advice for somebody that says, Andrew, I believe everything you said, I just need to get started, what do you say?
Pick up the phone.
Keep going. What do they do when they pick up the phone?
That's it.
What do they say?
And somehow you got to get through to the person you want to talk to, and you got to recognize that they probably don't know you. They may have heard of you, but they don't know you. Mm-hmm. They don't have a lot of time on their hands. They are a human being, and you need to offer them something that is going to be interesting and valuable to them.
Yeah.
And you need to do it really, really quick. You can develop you can earn the time for lots of other, what I call softer relationship building techniques afterwards. But in that initial call, in that initial contact, you've got to have something really tantalizing to offer them really fast.
Yeah. Okay. I said one last question, but I'm going to go a little bit deeper because our audience will love this. I heard 3 steps there. Pick up the phone, get through to the person that you need to get through, and then offer something tantalizing. As you look back over your career, what have been some of those tantalizing offers that you've seen people make? And I've got some ideas too. Maybe we go back and forth really quickly on this.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things I did when I ran business development was I would, if we lost a pitch for an airline, I would call the CMOs of all of the other airlines and say, we've just pitched for unsuccessfully such and such an airline, but I think in the course of that we discovered some interesting insights into how passengers behave or whatever the thing was. Will you give me half an hour to come and tell you what we learned?
I love it.
And there are very few clients who aren't interested in some form of insight from their competitors. So that would be an example of something.
I love it.
Other times it's just like we've created we created a really good presentation called Sex, Drugs, Rock and Roll and Advertising. It was all about the importance of emotion in advertising. But again, if you have a tantalizing enough title, and all you're asking for from somebody is 30 or 45 minutes, you can maybe get that appointment.
Yeah, those are great ideas. Other examples, audience, are introductions to other people, an offer of a working session where you're going to roll up your sleeves and help them tackle something. An expert that's come to town from your side that is open for dinner on one specific night they'd be willing to meet. There's just so many ways, and sometimes it takes a little creativity. But if I go back to your 3 steps, Andrew, pick up the darn phone, get to the right person, and offer them something tantalizing. I love that tantalizing word. Use your team, pick it, and offer it. Yeah.
I will say the other thing that is, when it's about who's the right person to get to. Sometimes we make the mistake of aiming too high too early.
Ooh,
And
tell me
actually,
more.
well, sometimes if I take our business, you'll say, look, I want to get to the CMO of such and such a company. And actually, you don't need to think of it as a one-step shot. You might have a lot more luck getting to a brand manager, creating an opportunity to meet with a brand manager, who, when you're with them, you will learn a lot more about that company that you can then use when you're trying to get to the CMO, or the brand manager, him or herself, will set up the meeting with the CMO. So it's not always, you don't always have to try to get straight in at the ultimate decision maker level. You can build towards that, and every engagement you have, every meeting you have is useful, because you're going to be learning something.
Yes.
You're going to be learning something about that company and that individual, even if you're not with them.
Yeah, brilliant. That's the perfect way to close and that lowers the bar for everybody, which sort of our point of this episode is pick up the phone. So don't feel like you have to have this perfect life-changing offer to the C-level person or whatever. Get in the door, pick up the phone, learn things, add more value in it. If you're true to yourself, if you're authentic and you're always adding value, people will help you succeed. So, Andrew, people are going to want to reach out to you. They're going to want to say thank you for the show, maybe connect directly. Where should they go?
Andrew.robertson@bbdo.com.
Awesome. We'll put that down in the show notes, everybody. Andrew, thanks for being on the show. This has been awesome. Audience, get this. Don't forget, subscribe, follow, set up those notifications, all that stuff, because we got 4 more awesome episodes coming up with Andrew next. Andrew, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey everybody, Mo Bunnell here, your host here at Real Relationships, Real Revenue, episode 2 with Andrew Robertson. He's CEO of BBDO Worldwide, one of the top agencies in the world. We're lucky to have him. And in this one, Andrew, I'm super interested in this because I don't know where you'll go with it. We haven't talked about your answer to this, but if you had to just grab out of the air right on the fly here, your personal definition of business development or relationship development, anything in that area, what would you say it is? How would you define it?
I think it is, at its best, a win, win, win. What I mean by that is, obviously, at its best, my business develops. But unless the client is winning as well, that is not going to last. And our most successful client engagements are the ones that last longest and develop most over time. So for me, it's really, really important that the client is winning out of this as well. And there's multiple definitions for what constitute the client winning. But the third thing is, the real win is if you can get to the point where that client is winning so much that they become one of your most effective business development ambassadors.
Oh, I love that.
Because nothing is more convincing than proactive recommendation from happy clients. Nothing.
Yeah, in you've seen the snowball system, we call that a raving fan, somebody who's out there proactively talking about you in the marketplace, almost if you have a lot of raving fans, it's almost like a personal sales force out there. And to your point, point, because it's a third party, it's even more compelling than if you were
Correct.
doing it. So,
Way
okay,
more.
let's dig deeper. You've had a lot of success with this personally, and of course, the scale at BBDO. Um, what's your advice to people that say, "Wow, I buy in. I really like the win for me and the client, but you're right, this third win of a referral source, a brand ambassador for me personally or my firm is important." What's your advice to people trying to build that? How do they do it?
Well, so I think the first thing is you have to, I mean, focusing on the second win, what's the win for the client, it is going to be the thing that certainly secures the win for us, right? So my, my win is a byproduct of that.
Yeah.
It's not in a way an objective. But the second thing is if the client wins enough, they're likely to be predisposed to becoming a raving fan or an ambassador, but you probably still have to ask them to do it. And
Yes.
it may not be, it may not be something that they automatically think of doing when you're not there. And so I think one of the things you need to do is, again, find another win for the client that ends up being that third win for you, which could be, some clients like to be on a conference platform. So, you know, get them on a conference platform to talk about what you've done for them and their brand. Get them a magazine article written. Do something that gets them something and gets you more. Um, but you have to proactively do it. Don't assume that it'll just happen, because people aren't like that. But and nor should they be.
Yep.
They just need. It doesn't end with delivering excellence for the client and delivering that win. To get the real value, you're going to have to go a little bit further.
Andrew, I love this. We see this. We've got a seven steps that we talk about in the Snowball System, our Grow Big training. That's sort of, we call the path, the raving fan. This idea of, how do I go from somebody I'd like to meet but I haven't met with, and then there's five other steps, and then the seventh
Yeah.
is they're this brand ambassador, personal ambassador, raving fan idea. And by far the fastest way to get from one step to the next is ask for it. What we see most people, most advisors, most experts around the world, is they stall out a step or two before raving fan. They do great work, they roll up their sleeves, the client's happy, and then sadly they go away and they go work about on something else. They don't transcend that commercial relationship to being helpful as humans. I want to help you personally. And then they don't take that and transcend it to the ambassador idea. What kind of things have you seen successful to even a step before of asking for a referral or article or stage, but to help somebody transition from, we've done great work together, but I want to get to know you more personally. I want to find ways to be helpful more in your, maybe even in your non-work life, in addition to your work life. How have you seen people transition from to bridge that gap?
Well, I think the first thing you have to do is you have to really recognize and think about the fact that the person you're working with is a person, not a job title.
Mm-hmm.
And and as a person, he or she has things that excite them, things that make them angry, things that frustrate them, things that they like to, we all have our own motivations, interests, and passion points and loathings. And I think that everybody is a person first, not a job. And and once you understand that and try to understand the person, you can usually find something. You can usually find something that you can engage with together. I mean, there's usually
Yeah.
something. Um, and some people really do like to get well informed on something or other. Some people really do want to be, you know, on a platform. Some
Yeah.
people want to build their own brand. Some people, uh, you know, are anxious about. There's all sorts of things that you can find in people as people once you recognize that you're talking to Mo, not to the founder and CEO of the Snowball Effect.
Andrew, I really like that. So let's play this out. So let's say I'm an expert out there. I've done great work with a client. We know we're going to finish up in a couple weeks. The board loves the work. Let's say it had really high view from in the organization. A nice transition might be, hey, let's go out and have dinner and celebrate our success. Now we've moved outside the working walls of the company and we're talking about the project. Then a nice question at that dinner meeting with maybe the whole team's there might be something like, gosh, how can we promote this great work we've done? I've got a couple ideas. We'd like to write a story on our website. I was thinking this might be interesting in this XYZ magazine. And then you start to move right along to that raving fan. So when you think about transcending from the work relationship to having the conversation about the human, about digging in and finding out what makes them tick, what are their goals and aspirations in the future, you do this super naturally. But if you had to get really practical and give somebody advice that maybe is a little more introverted, maybe they haven't ever thought about doing this, what can they do to get started to start having these non-work conversations, these more human-based conversations?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to. There's two things. One is dinners are obviously. I mean, I think there's a couple of things that work really well just to get time that doesn't require an explicit agenda. That's what
Yes,
you got to
yes.
get. One is dinner, and dinner is, in my view, always better than lunch because people are always, they're always time constrained at lunch and they need to get back and their head is still in what they haven't yet done. Where
I
dinner
like that. Yep.
works well. The second thing is, and it is quite literally to quote, walk in their shoes, which is, you know, if you've got a client that, I don't know, does retail visits, ask if you can accompany them on one of their retail visits.
Oh, I like that.
Ask if you can, go if they spend a day, which nearly everybody does, visiting customers or whatever. Just say, I'd really, really appreciate the chance to come with you, and you get two things out of that. You get more insight into what their work is like that doesn't involve you, and understanding that kind of context is very valuable. But you also get time together. Sometimes it'll be hours of travel time together, and that's that's a great way to get to know people. I once, in the days when everybody was frantically trying to get businesses up and running in China, I told my business development lead at the time that he should just go to Shanghai every week and be in the American Airlines lounge on the Friday evening for the flight from Shanghai to Chicago to New York, because I guaranteed that in that first and business class section of that flight, at least four of the people we were trying to see would be on that flight. And if you're in the lounge, it's not an imposition. You can have a conversation. You can set some. Anyway, he didn't do it. He should have. He's no longer here. But I think that finding the time where you don't have a fixed agenda is the first step. Then I think the second thing is, you need to think of some questions that you're going to ask, because the best time that the best conversation you'll ever have with a client in those circumstances is the one where you do 20% of the talking and they do 80.
Yes.
A, you're going to learn more, and B, they're going to enjoy it more.
Yeah.
So you've kind of got to figure out some questions that you can use as stimulus to get them talking. And you don't want to wait until you get there to say, gosh, the weather's terrible, or I mean, you need something slightly provocative but not intimidating that is going to get them talking about stuff that you can learn from.
Yeah.
And just, it's not too hard. You just have to think about it a little bit before you go to that airport lounge.
This is brilliant. I love all 3 points with that, because you added that third, get to some kind of time that doesn't require an agenda. find a way to accompany them while they do their work, and then have questions ready to ask that are insightful, provocative, that are get them thinking. It reminded me of a quick story, and I want to get your feedback on this. We were doing a program one time with a high-end law firm, and we were struggling with this idea. And our name for it is a give to get, where you do some kind of working session or so. You've seen it. And so this high-end lawyer, this is so brilliant. He just did it, just brute force. He calls up somebody he'd like to work with, GC at a very large organization up in Canada. And he said, hey, I was in this program. We learned this thing called Give to Get, and I want to work with you. So I'd like to offer something. Like, he just said it. He blamed the program. It was so funny. It was great.
Yeah.
It was so transparent. And she said, well, I'll tell you what I don't need. She said, I don't need a bunch of associates doing a bunch of research, because all law firms offer that. She goes, you know what I need, Mike? I need somebody to fly up to Canada and walk around our business and learn how we build what we build and how we install it, the fracking company. How do we install it in the ground? And I need somebody that knows our business, that happens to know law, and everybody else is trying to be a lawyer that doesn't know our business. So he's like, let's do it. Flew up there. They got caught in a snowstorm, had days together. They ended up getting hired for millions and millions of dollars of work because he did exactly what you said. So
Right.
just your thoughts on that, getting that. Here's my specific question. I try to paint it. You gave an agency example of, hey, go walk with them in a retail store and learn what they see, think about planograms, everything else. How are people interacting with the product? I gave a legal example. We talked about dinner. What are other ways that you can think of that people can get that unstructured time? I think this is an interesting topic to tackle.
Yeah. And I think one of the things we underestimate is the degree to which people might enjoy talking,
Yeah.
as long as they think, you're going to be interested in what they've got to say. And I think we all too often think we have to have something
Yes.
to give them. I mean, I know you never use the word to sell, but we actually feel like we've got to have something to offer, when actually there is value and a benefit for a lot of people in just having the chance to talk.
Yes.
And so if you said, I'm not coming, I don't want to come and talk to you about some research we've done. I want to do some research. I want to really understand
Yes.
what your business is like, and what, and I know it's a lot to ask. I know it's a lot to ask, but if you could just give me, an hour over a quick bite or something like that, I'd really, really appreciate it. And you may find that people are actually more than happy to do that, because quite often people have just got a lot to say that they haven't had a chance to say. Like this woman, it was fascinating that he got there just by coming straight out with it.
Yeah.
Because it would have been tempting to do what everybody else does.
Yeah.
I've done some research into, and I'd like to come and show it to you.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. Well, and not only did he do it just with that transparency, but she absolutely loved it. And then she learned a lot, and they ended up, like, the whole stream of events happened that no one could predict. That was amazing. But it was just the fact of, it goes back to our prior episode in a way of, like, picking up the phone, just do something. And I loved your example. I love that ending. That, I think it's a perfect ending of this episode, that people underestimate that we underestimate they might just want to meet with us and tell us about them. I mean, that has value in itself. We're learning, and I loved your 20%, 80%, 20% us, 80% them. We'll find ways to be helpful if we can get that meeting. So
Correct.
Andrew, brilliant, really great stuff. A+ episode. People are going to want to reach out to you. They're going to want to say thank you, connect with you in some way, maybe even ask about BBDO. How should they do that?
Andrew.robertson@bbdo.com.
Awesome. Audience, we'll put that down in the show notes too, in case you're barreling down the highway, so you can click on it later. Everybody, don't forget, follow, subscribe to the show. We've got 3 more great episodes coming up with Andrew next. Andrew, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey everybody, Mo Bunnell here, your host at Real Relationships, Real Revenue, 3rd of 5 episode with Andrew Robertson. He's CEO of BBDO Worldwide. We're just so lucky to have him on the show. The last episode, I'm not going to recap it, everybody, but you need to go back and watch it. If you've ever wondered about how you reach out to clients, how you add value, how you gain traction with the relationship. We just covered it in the last one. So go back and watch or listen to that. Andrew, in this episode, I want to ask, you've dug into the snowball system. What's your favorite science step or story? Just anything, like what popped to the top for you?
I tell you, the thing I found most shocking in a positive way was the writing down the 7 relationships that are going to be most important to developing your business. I found that really, really fascinating.
Yeah, tell me more.
I realized that I am spending a lot of time developing relationships that are really, really good, but maybe aren't the things that are going to drive the business,
Mm,
or aren't the relationships that are going to drive the business. Um, as an example, what do I mean by that? Like I have good relationships with a number of CEOs of very large companies, and those relationships have been developed over years, usually because those clients were, in somewhere else, another part of the world, lower, lower level job, and we first started developing, and then
yep,
they go up through the
yep.
organization. And you kind of take your relationship with them, but forget that actually the people who are going to make a decision about whether they're going to hire us or fire us as an advertising agency are where that person was when you first met them.
Hmm.
And so I found that really, just rethinking that. It was like, instead of just assuming that because this person is now the CEO, she is the one who's going to be responsible for generating more business for you. Think back to how you got into that position and focus your attention on somebody who might. That was the first part. The second part was how instinctively, when you're asked to list the most important relationships for your business, what you do is you list the best
Yeah,
relationships you
yeah.
have.
Everybody does it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a completely instinctive response. But when you interrogate the question properly, you have to recognize that it's the ones that are going to develop your business, not the ones where you have the best relationships that are necessarily going to. And then the third thing I really liked was the fact that you said 7. And I know there's no magic to 7, other than it's not 10 or 20 or 3. I like the specificity of the 7, because it really forces you to make choices. And within that, this idea that it's going to be a mix, and you need to make your decision about what that mix should be between people with whom you already have a relationship, people with whom you don't have a relationship but would like to, and people who can help you. So people you need a relationship with who will never give you business directly but can help you get it from somewhere
Yeah.
else. And in our case, there are new business consultants and people like that who could fall into that third bucket, but it wouldn't be exclusively them. But I find that fundamental, step, really, really rigorously deciding who the 7 most valuable relationships you can have are,
Yeah.
was was mind blowing. And it's funny because it's without it, nothing else that you do will can possibly be as effective. And yet, I bet it's a step that most people leap straight over.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, think of how many, and I'll do air quotes, sales training methodologies are all about you get an opportunity and you land the opportunity, and there's something in between that you learn how to do. But I don't know any others than ours that says, no, well, that's fine. You need to do that. We've got that. But to focus on relationships, I mean, that's where your long-term success is going to be. And nobody,
Yep.
nobody does it. So let me ask a follow-up because I loved all your 3 points. Writing them down, not locking in or anchoring status quo bias on the people we already know, and then that third one of get it to a small number, 7. What do you think, or has been the difference between before and after you did that? Or what, you maybe you've already seen some difference, or maybe it's still coming and you anticipate it. What do you think the difference is between handling relationships reactively or saying, no, no, I'm still going to keep in touch with people, but these 7 people, I'm really going to double down on.
Well, I mean, I think there's two things. One is depending on what your job is, obviously the answer to that question is going to be different. So one of my people who might be running a very large single client engagement
Yeah,
is going to have a different list
yep,
from me running BBDO worldwide, but the principle isn't different. The principle is the same, which is you you only have a certain amount of time. You need to be clear on what your priorities are, both in terms of who, but also then what you're going to do. So for me, that was a big unlock, and I I think I would say the biggest element of that is just recognizing how important it is for me to focus on building relationships outside of the C-suite.
I like that. And no matter speaking to everybody, obviously not just you, but I'm looking at you, audience, everybody. We're all in different places. But if we want to have the impact on the world that we want to have, we by definition have to be laddering up our relationships over time. And that by definition means some have to be demoted a little bit to more reactive. It doesn't mean we still don't care about the people, but we'll spend a little less
Yeah.
proactive time. And by definition, that means we've got to stretch into some new relationships that we don't know. And that's scary. So Andrew, back to you. You've got all these folks that report up to you worldwide through BBDO. Think of all of our audience members, consultants, lawyers, account managers at big healthcare companies, things like that. What's your advice to somebody that struggles that says, "Hey, I did the exercise. I paused the episode. I wrote down 7 names. 4 of these people I don't know well yet. I'm hesitating." What's your advice to them
Pick up,
to get unstuck?
pick up, pick up the
Back
phone.
to episode 1. That's right.
Advice is episode one. Pick up the
Yeah,
phone.
yeah.
And then I think part of it is, but the other part of writing it down is it creates a certain level of personal accountability
Yes.
that you can't escape from, because if you have a very long list that you make a little bit of progress against some of, um, you can delude yourself that you're making real progress, when I think one of the other things I'd say is that you really want to have this short list, and you want to have very short time frames. A
Go
series of
deeper. Yeah.
sprints, a
Yes.
series of sprints, because if there will be occasions where it doesn't go anywhere, but you're better off finding that out in 3 months than 2 years. And if it's not going to go anywhere, you can replace that person's name with somebody else on your list. So to me, I think the minute you write it down, you sort of create your own accountability, especially if you put a short window on it.
I like that. Pro ninja tip for the audience. One of our top law firm clients took this idea of we call it a protomoy list. It's a Greek word. It means first among equals. This is the writing down of the 7 names. He actually, instead of using our pretty forms, he actually put a whiteboard above his desk and wrote the names down there. So
That's clever.
every day when he walked in his office, those names stared at him, to your point, Andrew, and he felt compelled to reach out. He went from income partner to equity partner as fast or faster than anybody else in his firm, or very quickly. I think he set the record for the fastest, largely because he did this. So anyway,
That's clever.
isn't that cool? So then the idea of writing it down was not only writing it down, to your point, but he put it in a place where it stared at him every day when he's in the office. So, hey, last words of wisdom for you in this episode. This has been really rich, really good stuff. A+ episode. When you think about relationships, when you think about investing in people, when you think about being proactive, just in the broadest sense of the world, What's your sort of parting wisdom to folks around how to do that?
I mean, I just think be very thoughtful. Go sit on the other side of the desk and really try and empathize with the person that you're trying to build a relationship with and develop business with. Um, Recognize that they have to want to buy, not you have something to sell.
That's the mic drop. I have nothing to add. That was great. People are going to want to reach out to you, Andrew. They want to say thank you for this episode. It was so dense with insights. How should they reach out?
Andrew.robertson@bbdo.com.
There you go, folks. We'll put it in the show notes. Inquire about BBDO services. They are awesome. And Andrew's a great human being. So, Andrew, thanks for being on the show. Audience, don't forget, follow, subscribe. Make sure you set up those notifications. We've got 2 more amazing episodes with Andrew coming up next. Hey everybody, Mo Bunnell here, your host at Real Relationships, Real Revenue. This is the 4th of 5 episodes. Andrew Robertson, he's CEO of BBDO Worldwide. We have had 3 amazing episodes before this one where we've talked about how to focus on business development, what Andrew's definition is. In the last episode, then we dug into relationships, how to form them, how to focus on the right ones. Really, really great stuff. Make sure you go back and watch or listen to those. In this one, Andrew, I want to get inspirational for everybody. I think honestly, I asked the same same 5 questions of all the folks that are guests here in season 3. This one's maybe my favorite. So tell me a story. Tell me a business development story that you're particularly proud of.
I was running AMV BBDO in London, and one of our largest clients was a retailer called Sainsbury's.
Yeah.
And we had their account for 20 years and had done, some of what was recognized to be some of the best work in the business with them. And we got into, there was a change in management and we got into a bit of trouble. And then we produced a terrible piece of work, truly terrible piece of work. Starring John Cleese, actually, it was so bad that we lost the account. We didn't lose the whole account, but they took the so-called brand work and gave it to an agency called M&C Saatchi, and they asked us to keep working on the black and white newspaper advertising, which was not very glamorous, a lot of hard work, not a lot of money. But there was a lot of it, and they didn't want to move everything to M&C at once. And my colleagues and I discussed whether we should do that or not, or whether we should just say no, we're out. And I said we are going to stay in this. We're going to hang in with this client, even if we only have that tiny little bit of work from them. Because at some point, M&C will stumble, and I want to be walking their hallways when they do. And a lot of people in the industry, and certainly in our agency, thought we were, crazy, and that we should have just walked away and all that stuff. But we didn't. We stayed on. We stayed with them, and it was 3 years later that, as always happens in a client agency relationship, the agency got stuck, and they were having trouble delivering work, and there'd been more changes in the management, and we proactively took to the client a brand new brand campaign. We developed it based on what we thought they needed, which was informed in some part by the fact that we were still stalking their hallways with the black and white newspaper ads. And the essence of this campaign was that we were going to bring back, we wanted to put the focus back on the quality of the food that they prepared. But we had Jamie Oliver, the chef, was going to be the star of the show, and we presented it to the CMO on the Thursday of an Easter weekend, and she said, if you can bring me Jamie Oliver's signature on a contract on Tuesday morning, you'll get the business back. And Jamie Oliver he wasn't very famous at all. He'd done a BBC show, you know, he had a good book, but he really wasn't that famous. I think he was 19. And his real
We
love
might
was
actually
music.
have that book in our kitchen. It's like
The Naked
Jamie
Chef.
Oliver's. Yes, it was this.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So he had this BBC thing, and of course, you know, getting a contract done was complicated, not least because he was signed up with the BBC, which was a non-commercial organization. So for him to do advertising, we had to go through hoops to get that sorted out. But as if that wasn't enough, he was holed up in a garage somewhere with his band, and didn't have a cell phone, and we literally were scouring London trying to find this garage so that we could get to him. And I can remember all through that Easter weekend, every hour I would call the team who was working with it and say, "Have you heard anything? Have you found him? Have you found?" And they would phone me and say, "No, we haven't done it." Anyway, we eventually got to him on Monday afternoon, and on Tuesday morning we were able to go in with a letter of intent signed by Jamie Oliver, and we got the business back.
Wow.
And nothing in my life has ever been as sweet as winning back that piece of business. Nothing. And for me, the real there's two real learnings from it. Actually, there's three. The first is be gracious on the way out,
Mm-hmm.
because, and we were at the time, we were gracious, because no matter how you may or may not have, you know, let your client down, it's hard for them to fire you. For them personally, it's hard to fire you. But so be gracious. Don't make it harder than it already is.
Yeah.
The second thing is treat it as a not for now, not a never. And hang in there. And in this case, we were able to hang in because we were given a lifeline to hang on to. But even if you haven't got the lifeline, keep going back. Because the third learning is quite often the devil you know is better than the one you don't. And we have, I'm happy that, like, that was the best moment, but we have been appointed by clients who have fired us more than once, because even though we did something that we needed to get fired for, we kept those relationships alive, and they knew enough about us and trusted us enough to come back to us later. And I think we've got a horrible habit in most businesses of walking away from things when you get a no or
Yeah.
you get fired. And actually, those are still really valuable prospects and relationships to work with, because they know you a bit, and knowing you a bit is better than knowing somebody else not at all.
Andrew, there's so much richness in this. A lot of times I have one question lined up right away, but I want to think about it a little bit. I think
Mhm.
my initial reaction was we show our true selves like 10x or 100x in times of defeat or in tough times versus easy times. And when work's
Yeah,
going well for a client, it's easy to be a nice person and all those other things. But man, when you get fired or when things go off the rails, it happens in complicated technical expert driven work. Happens a lot. And that's how you react in those situations, like this one, you got fired and you were gracious on the way out, your words. I just think it's brilliant because that says so much about your character, the team's character, the organization's character, that they remembered that years later and they gave you a shot when you did the other two things you mentioned. So
yeah.
just give me your thoughts around relationships and this idea of we really expose, amplify what we're really like in tough times.
Well, I think there's two parts to that. One is recognizing how hard it is for a client to fire you.
Yeah, I like that. Keep going.
In, you know, that because they're human beings, and this is always a difficult moment for them. No matter, like, unless you've been unbelievably awful, in which case they may never want to see you again. But generally, if you're working with a client, you've developed some kind of relationship with them that somehow they now have to end, and that's hard for people. So making it no harder than it has to be is valuable to them. But the second thing is so there's value in it for them. But the second thing is what you said, which is it says a lot about you to them that they will remember later on down the road. And weirdly, they can still be advocates for you, even if you're not working with them. And being able to keep that relationship going, even when you've been fired, people just appreciate it.
Yeah.
They just appreciate, because they're human beings. We're all like that.
I want to drop down into this. There's one thing I see professionals do, or let me say it this way, not do nearly as often as they should, and it's ask for feedback after a loss. In this case, in your story, you got let go, but especially after a loss, after getting let go, I'll share to the audience a 4-step process that we've found works really well on calls like this. And Andrew, I want to get your feedback for it. And here, this is how it goes. You ask somebody, let's say you lost something, it was a big pursuit, put a lot of time into it, really wanted to win. What most professionals do is not ask for feedback at all. Oh, we lost. Okay. Oh my gosh. No, ask for a feedback call. So the 4 steps you do in a call are A, ask for it, and then say, hey, sorry we didn't win. We'd really love to learn from this. So you're really positioning right at the beginning. The first thing is, we'd really love to learn from this. 2, can you tell me who won? And sometimes they won't be able to tell you. That's okay. Maybe it's not public yet or whatever. But even if not, they'll usually give people something. Well, we went with more of a boutique on this one. Or we went with, usually there's enough of information there you can figure it out or at least get feedback. After step 2, what we find is effective is pivot to the future. Andrew, I think you're really going to like this. And that is, what we'd like to continue to stay in touch. What kind of big initiatives are coming down the pike? What kind of things are important for you, priorities in the future? What kind of things would you like us to bring to you? And you typically ask conceptually at first. Would you like us to invite you to this type of webinar, to send you this type of thought topic? Can we follow up? Something conceptual in the future. And then the 4th thing is some kind of very specific thing. Oh, great. Well, we've got a webinar like that coming up next month. Why don't I invite you to it? Or, yes, that sounds good. I'll follow up in 6 months and we'll have lunch, whatever. But those 4 things of I'm open to learning. Can you tell me who won and why? And then pivot to the future. What kind of things can I be of help going forward? And then ending with some kind of very precise, practical thing that you're promising. That is a wonderful sequence. It typically only takes 10 or 15 minutes, and you learn so much from it, and it retains and deepens the relationship. So, Andrew, your thoughts on that approach?
So I think it's an excellent approach. The one little build on it, I would make.
And you can change things. Feel free to blow it up too. It's all right.
But the one thing I find is that, again, coming back to understanding how difficult those conversations usually are for the client as people, is to and I find that you're probably not going to get great feedback in that moment because of that. They're going to try and make you feel better because it's hard for them in that moment.
Agreed.
So the one thing I would say is just say, oh, this is obviously terribly disappointing, but I don't want to, the only thing worse for me than losing would be losing and not learning. So all I would ask for is that in a month's time, we can have a phone call, or I can come and see you, and you can give me really good feedback on what we could have done differently and better, and or what whoever won did. Because I think when you just, so all you need is agreement to that.
Yes.
And it's very hard for somebody to say, no, I'm not going to do that. But it takes the heat out of the moment, And I think you, in a month's time, get much better feedback than you would in a very short period of time. And also, that's a moment when, if you say, I'm going to regard this as, just so you understand, I'm regarding this as a pause, not an end to our relationship. And at some point, I'm determined that we're going to work together again, and I am going to. At a month from that first call is a lot easier for them to contemplate that than in that moment. So I think they're the right elements. I just think if you inject a little bit of the humanity into it and create a bit more space, you'll get more out of it.
Andrew, I love it. I think it's the perfect ending, and I really like that. I really like that build, that twist, that change of it, because I think you're exactly right. Time passing will let them be more transparent. And then even the question I asked, the second one of like who won, a better version of that would probably be, could you tell me what could we have done better? Or could you tell me what we could have done differently? That's actually better than what I said as number two. And I think you hinted towards that. So that's a good add too. Yep.
Okay.
Good. Hey, everybody. Andrew is awesome, as you might have expected. Tons of really high level and practical things in this episode. Andrew, what I took away was that perseverance. That's what inspired me, is like you lost that work and you went back, and every day you're thinking about, how do I win this back? It took 3 years, 1,000 days
Yeah.
plus, and you got through it. So people are going to want to reach out to you. They're going to be inspired to say thank you, maybe inquire about BBDO services, or just want to say thank you. Where should they go?
Andrew.robertson@bbdo.com.
Awesome. We'll put that in the show notes, everybody. Everybody, don't forget, follow, subscribe, set up those notifications. We got one big episode with Andrew coming up next. Andrew, this has been fantastic. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Hey everybody, Mo Bunnell here, your host at Real Relationships, Real Revenue. I'm grinning from ear to ear because I'm sad and excited at the same time. This is our last episode with Andrew Robertson. He's CEO of BBDO Worldwide, and I'm elated because, Andrew, you've dropped some serious knowledge in the first 4 episodes, and I'm most excited about this one because it's a fun one. If you could wave a magic wand, you can record a video and send it back to your younger self and give yourself some kind of advice, something around relationship development, business development, growth skills, things like that. What would you record in that video? What would you say to your former self?
I would start by saying there is very little in business life that is nearly as rewarding and satisfying as developing business. That when you really develop it, when you have a client who is genuinely winning as a result of their experience of working with you, or where you win a client, it's such a great feeling. It's such a great feeling, because generally everybody is winning. So the first thing I'd say is it's a wonderful thing to be good at, almost irrespective of what you do.
Yep.
The second thing, though, is that the process of doing it is also very rewarding when you allow yourself to define victory in a series of steps, not just by the end result.
Mm-hmm.
And so breaking down the process of business development into a series of steps that you work your way through, and you give yourself a pat on the back every time you take a positive step towards that end result, means that the journey itself is rewarding, not just the destination. The third thing is, the hardest thing to do is to take the first step. And if you can just get over that hump, things will get a lot better. And you'll start to get, because until you've taken the first step, there is no joy. All there is anxiety about the fact you haven't taken the first step. So so the third thing, which is probably the most important, is just get going. Just get going. Take the first step, and everything from then on will feel better. But we're all, you know, I worked with a wonderful writer, a guy called Peter Suter, and he had this whole thing. He said, "You just have to start writing. You just have to
Yeah.
start writing.
Yeah.
When you write, you'll come up with every possible reason why you're not going to start writing. I'll go and get another cup of coffee, or I'll go and adjust the writing, whatever it is." And he said, just don't do that. Just start writing, and even if you throw it away, 5 times, you will get there faster than
Yep.
if you wait for all the conditions to be perfect before you do. And I think that to me is the biggest hurdle for people to overcome, whenever they're thinking about business development. It's like just take the first step, pick up the phone, go up to that person, whatever it is. You got to do that. And I think my younger self would have could have benefited from that even earlier than I actually did, and I was 19. So, but I think that would be it.
Yeah, I like that. And I want to point out to everybody, if you want to dig deeper into that 19-year-old story that Andrew gave, that's back in our first episode in our 5-part series here. It's brilliant. I'm not going to tell you what it is because you have to go back to the first episode and check it out. But on this one, I want to dig into something, and you breezed past it so fast. But I want to dig deeper into this particular topic because, Andrew, this is one of the biggest stumbling blocks I see professionals have. And it was in your second of the 3 ideas when you're talking about break down the process, it's rewarding, break it down into small steps. And you breezed past this point, you said, and pat yourself on the back when you do a step. So many people, I think, don't get started, your third idea, because they get so like emotionally wound up about the outcome. Their own egos at play. Is the person going to react well? Are they going to like me? Should I reach out again? They haven't replied back to my first thing. Should I call them because they haven't emailed me? People get so hung up on this. And what we see as success is folks who pull that back, separate themselves from the outcome, and do something, to your third point, and pat themselves on the back and reward themselves for that. So just go deeper into your philosophy of pulling things back to what you can control and continue to march forward, rewarding yourself, patting yourself on the back for the things that you are doing.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's I remember talking to one of the coaches from the IMG Academy, the sports academy in Florida, and he was talking about working with young tennis players. And he said, every young tennis player arrives at the academy when you say, okay, what is it you want to do? They all say, I want to win the US Open. And then he said, well, okay, that's an outcome. That's an outcome. What is it that you want to learn to do? And then they'll say, I want to learn to win 65% of my matches or something. And again, he just says, no, those are outcomes. And it goes all the way through, works it all the way back. And he says, what you need to learn to do is to lob the ball so that it lands on your left shoulder. And then what you learn to do is to have your feet in this position. And he broke down, they started with a goal of winning the US Open, but he broke it down into a series of steps that would help get you there. Probably wouldn't get you to the US Open, but the whole point was you can then have a victory once you've learned to lob the ball so it lands on your left shoulder. You can have a victory once you learn to scratch you back with your racket. And I think that business development is such a, people are thrown targets. So everybody has a target. You need to get this amount of money. But really what you need to do is to work out what the steps are and then work through the steps. And it doesn't guarantee you're going to get it, but it makes it a lot more likely. But more importantly, it makes it a much more positive experience because you're making progress. You're making progress against that, as opposed to it being a digital, binary, yes, I did or no, I didn't outcome. And I think it just makes it more fun.
Yeah, 100%. And we've even had clients gamify it with say, hey, asking for a check-in call with client, inviting them to an event or webinar we got coming up, introducing them to somebody else. We'll even work with teams sometimes and say what counts as a point, and then there are all things they can 100% control. We can't control if they say yes to attending the webinar or the client appreciation dinner or whatever we're doing, but we can control if we invite them. And then we've even had teams, because some cultures are so collegial, they didn't even want to have individual goals. They wanted to develop a group goal. We're going to get 300 asks or outreaches by this date, but it doesn't matter who does it. We just want the whole team to do it, and that's been fun to do. So just pulling it back. I loved your example. Break it down, pull it back what you can control, and keep moving forward.
Yeah.
Cool. Andrew, this has been a blast. I think that's just a great way to close this episode. I think the tennis story at the end was just perfect. So people are going to want to reach out to you. They're going to want to say thank you, not just for this episode, but all 5. Like, they were all rich with content, insights, great ideas, practical steps that people can put in place. Where should they go to reach out to you to say thank you?
Andrew.robertson@bbdo.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. Let's give a big round of applause. Email Andrew, tell him you say thank you. Give him an insight. Maybe you've got a helpful tip or something for him. Really great stuff. Andrew, just can't thank you enough. This has been a blast. I've been looking forward to it all week. Thanks for being on Real Relationships, Real Revenue.
It's good. It's fun. Thank you.